so as you could see, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, there's been a steady rise in people working from home. We had approximately 8 to 9 people working from home back in 2018. So that's a little dated data, but you could probably see now this thing is increasing. If you go to like the next slide, according to Gallup, more and more companies have been implementing working from home policies, and to some extent it's becoming a perk for a lot of employees and employee retention. However, there's a significant workforce of people that is disengaged, that are remote workers, and that impacts the efficiency and productivity. And according to Forbes, remote worker is no longer a privilege, which has been recently reported by Forbes. It's become the standard operating mode for at least 50% of the U.S. population. 50% of our U.S. workers say that they would quit their current jobs for the one that allows flexible time or flexi hours. And that percentage is about to explode, whether companies are prepared for it or not. COVID really won't be an issue forever, but the remote workforce will be. So that, there's something that's going to continue to stay. And so as you could see in this graph, we're going through this, some people call it the world's largest work from home experiment. All right, about 2/3 of employees, which is, let's say, around 66%, are currently working remotely at least once per week as a result of the COVID outbreak. Before the coronavirus pandemic, about 17% of U.S. employees worked from home 5 days or more per week. Now that number is around 44%. So the engagement levels of people working from home has been fairly low pre-COVID, and we all know that most people are not trained, nor they're wired, nor they have the right processes and tools that can make them efficient and productive working from home, which results in a significant inefficiencies and productivity leakage. And by the, like as I mentioned before, we shouldn't be surprised if most of us don't want to come back to the office. So the question is, what are we going to do about it? Right, and this is what we're going to be discussing in today's webinar, and provide some web practices in how we can increase efficiency and productivity quotient of people working from home. All right, so at the outset, you need to establish authenticity by, so before you even set up goals and KPIs, you need to first establish authenticity by making your teams understand your leadership style, your personal agenda, your goals, your business goals, and your expectations. In fact, certain leaders, including myself, they write down what their goals are, what their rules are, and they usually give it out to their team, and then they continue to repeat them for years. They continue to repeat that exercise on a quarterly basis. Another thing that's really important in being able to build rapport and authenticity is really let people understand the why part. Why what you do as a leader. Why are you having this goal? So this way people are able to relate to you. Your job as a leader is also to adjust your style to each individual employee on your team and how they like to be led versus getting them to adjust to your style. So don't count on your team trying to get it just to your style. You should adjust your style based on the member of your team. Further empathy and coaching style in an environment where you have remote workers is going to become a critical style to build trust and rapport with your team members. Otherwise, it's very easy for employees to become rebellions if you don't build rapport. Another thing that's really important is communication. Just kind of enable and foster an environment where open communication through multiple tools and channels, so they understand your logic, and they understand why you're doing what you're doing, why we're doing what we're doing, and then also indicate them that you really trust them. That they can get the job done. And this is where communication tools outside of email will play a major role. Email is not a really good communication tool. It's more like an FYI tool, and it's not a workflow either. Email is not a workflow tool either. So these things will help build your trust quotient with your team, and it'll continue to go up over time as long as you are fairly consistent in all of these three things: authenticity, your coaching and leadership style, and your communication style. So let's go to the next slide. And so once the trust foundation has been laid, then what you need to do is you need to make sure that there is uber clarity on the goals. Clarity on goals will build mastery, and the goals you mutually set will drive actions your teams will take. So make sure they are very specific goals in terms of, so when I say specific, we're talking about SMART goals. We've heard a lot about that, which is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So sometimes people have a hard time defining what specific means, and to me, what specific means is a goal that has some sort of an ETA, a goal that has a dollar figure, the goal that has a number at the end or percentage at the end of something that is very specific, which makes it very results-based goal versus a task-based goal. So here's an example of a results-based goal, and the specific goal would be to, say achieve cloud migration by June 30th. Right? So now it's very specific. You're migrating, but you're doing it by June 30th of this year. Or how about 50% of the goal migration, cloud migration, to be done by the end of 2020, for example, right? So 2020 is very specific, and 50% is also very specific. So these are an example of results-based goal, and an example of task-based goal would be we will work on cloud migration. So that's very loosey-goosey. It's not as specific. It doesn't tell you by when, and so that's an issue, or what percentage. It's a little vague, and it's missing the month and the year, and the percentage of migration would be done. Right. So that's what that means by. So what we mean by specific goals. Also, another example of SMART goals or KPI or metrics are, such as, metrics on your sprint velocity, metrics on your individual stories accomplished, metrics on your bug source metrics, how many bugs you'll solve and how many bugs will come in, and also some 360 surveys that you could do internally within your